my name's Charlie and welcome to my channel and welcome to my favourite books of the year so far. I always love these videos. I always love like that it's a sort of way of sort of like highlighting obviously the best books we've read so far, but also I always think the interesting part of this is kind of like what's going to make the end of the year favourites. So yeah, we'll see how many of these will or whatever, but yeah, I'm going to dive right into them. I've got 13 books to quickly talk to you about. I'm going to try and do it as all of this as quickly as possible and succinctly as possible. Bear in mind, it's me. So the 13th book that I've got on the list, none of these are in any particular order except for I'd say my top three are my top three, if you know what I mean. Right. But we'll start with Trans Britain, which is edited by Christine Burns. This does what it says in the tin. It's the history of being trans in Britain, and it basically goes from sort of the 1970s-ish upwards. I've mentioned this in a video before. If I can find the screenshot of the contents page, I will, because it has got various contributors in as well. It was outstanding. It was so interesting. If you like sort of Paul Baker, that sort of writing, definitely check this book out. It's just so interesting. Honestly, it taught me so much, and I think it's actually very accessible. The language is very accessible. It didn't feel too textbook heavy. So yeah, that's that one. I'm going to storm right onto the next one, which is by my lovely friend Charles Heathcote, and it's An Heir to Murder. And in this book, so this is a cosy crime, and we follow Alice Valentine and Marmaduke Featherstone, and it's sort of set in a cosy village. Apart from these books, Charlie's most famous for writing his Our Doris series, and so if you know those books, there's also like little sneaky like Easter eggy things in there from that tie in from those books to this. But so yeah, you just gets that added element, and I just loved this book so much. It was a joy to read. Charlie's books are always like a comfort read, and yeah, just gorgeous. Can't recommend enough, as I'm going to say about all of these. The next book on my list I've actually got right next to me is The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by Booktubers' Katie Lumsden. I was lucky enough to go to the book launch of this in February, I think it was, and I've actually got a signed copy. Here you go. But aside from that, like aside from Katie being lovely, I was actually sort of a little bit nervous going into this, but I needn't be, because it was just gorgeous. It's historical fiction. We follow Margaret Lennox, who is governess at Hartwood Hall. If you like classics, it's got loads of little nuggety bits that you will love from that. And it's just, yeah, again, very cosy, but also just really interesting. It's just lovely. Loved it. Loved the characters in this book. Loved the plotting, loved the pacing, and yeah. And I love it. Sort of, this is told in volumes as well, I think. Yeah. And end papers. Check it out. It's worth the hype. It's worth all the praise. It was gorgeous. So yeah, that's that. The next book on my list I've got is Tomorrow I Become a Woman by Aiwanose Odafen, and this book really surprised me. This was I'm reading Booktubers' favourite position, and this actually is an Instagram, someone I follow on Instagram's favourites, and which I'll pink all the links in the description to the Instagrammer. And it's set in Nigeria in the early 1970s. So it sort of had previously, you can feel the effects of the Biafran War that are still being felt in this story. And so yeah, we follow our lead character of Obianaji, and it's sort of how she meets Chigozie, and her, it's sort of all the and sort of her relationship with him. But there's so many things to this book which I just adored. You have it's very there's lots and lots of content warnings in this, so beware of that. So you have sort of the relationship with him, which is tumultuous. You have friendships that get taught, like you get to meet her friend, Obianaji's friends. You obviously get to see the politics of Nigeria at that time, and then also at its core, I would say, it's sort of this mother-daughter relationship in the book. That's one of the things that I thought was really interesting. as well. So yeah, so hard hitting, brutal story, but again, it had so much heart to it, and I haven't heard that many people talking about this book. So it's just really gorgeous writing. I love the writing, and I think this is a debut novel actually. And yeah, so if you haven't checked out Tomorrow I Become a Woman, 100% do. You will not regret it. Just gorgeous book. The next book is Don't Cry For Me by Daniel Black, and in this book it's a love letter to this guy's son. So we follow Jacob, and he's sort of writing a letter to his son, his queer son, who he's distanced from, and it's sort of saying sort of like he's recognizing all the things he's done wrong, and it's sort of you're hearing his sort of history of yeah, it's hard, like I'm not describing it very well, but it's a really gorgeous book, and another one that comes with loads and loads of trigger warnings. But yeah, it's again so much heart to this book as well, and it's just sort of an interesting take on this sort of like story. So yeah, check it out. The next book I've got, this was sent to me by the lovely Jack from Spread Book Joy. I love Jack, another one of my lovely friends. And we're following, it's Mort by Terry Pratchett. I actually listened to this on audiobook as I sort of did a combined read of it, where I had the physical book and listened to the audiobook. The audiobook is narrated so well. It's like this cast of like people, and it's just gorgeous. And yeah, I just love this book so much. I know this is like Terry Pratchett is one of Jack's favourite authors, and I can see why. This was like my first solo read by Terry Pratchett, and it won't be the last because I've already read the next book. So this is the first book in the Death series, and in this book we follow Mort, who basically stumbles upon, he meets death and becomes Death's apprentice. So yeah, and yeah, it's just so much fun. And this is sort of series I can see will be another sort of comfort thing to me. You're going to see a theme within these books. Some of the books I love that sort of like make me cry and like push me emotionally, and then other of these books are like proper cozy comfort reads, and this is another of the cozy comfort reads. So yeah, thank you Jack for the brilliant recommendation. I'm so pleased I read it. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is one that's kind of getting quite a lot of hype, but also in part mixed reviews. This could be on the book of this year, and it's called Immemorium by Alice Winn. And this is a book, in this book we follow Sydney Elwood and Henry Gaunt, and they're young boys, they're sort of young lads when we first meet them, and it's sort of set at the beginning of the book. It's set in the boarding school, it's set in the early 1900s, 1914, and yeah, we follow them in the boarding school, and then when they both go off to war. So it's extremely brutal. But yeah, I just thought this book had so much heart to it. I'm not entirely sure of the historical accuracy of this story. I do not know that, but that wasn't it wasn't really about that for me. It was these characters, and with the contrast of these brutal things that are going on in the background. So yeah, I feel like Alice Winn just did such a great job of this book, and I flew through it. I think I read it like in a weekend. Me and Charlie were sort of buddy reading it, and we stormed through it. It was another one of the books that we stormed through together. And yeah, I just know that this is going to be a book that sort of stays with me like forever. These characters will stay with me, and obviously it's based on real story, so you know, I guess it kind of just makes it even more hard-hitting for those reasons. Yeah. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is Friendaholic by Elizabeth Day. This is a non-fiction, and it's basically talking about friendship, and it talks about Elizabeth Day's experiences with the friendships in her life. It talks at the beginning, she sort of talks historically about friendships. It's a topic that doesn't get discussed very much, and I just found the whole book really interesting, and it sort of made me have lots to think about. So I love a non-fiction that does that, and yeah, so it was just a very refreshing, interesting non-fiction. So yeah, that's that one. The next book is the last non-fiction on this list, and it is Dear Sensorian by Akwaeke Emezi. Emezi is probably one of my favourite authors. They are one of my favourite authors. Every single book that I've read by them I've just loved, and this is their memoir, and yeah, in this book they talk about numerous different things to do with experiences they've had as an author, but also it talks about their physical and mental health as well. So again, and I actually listened to the audiobook which was narrated by them, so that's another strong audiobook recommendation for you, sorry. Yeah, brilliant. Like Emezi, like I feel like writes on a different level to everybody else, so my personal opinion. That's that one. The next book on my list is my favourite, well, it was a Women's Prize book, and it was my favourite from this year's Women's Prize. There were loads of really strong books on this year's Women's Prize, and Demon Copperhead dearly and Wandering Souls did nearly make my list, but they didn't, because the one I'm going to talk to you about is Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. If you guys have watched the plot along or joined in the plot along or whatever, you would have known that this is my favourite. I just adored this book. This is set with the backdrop of the Troubles in Ireland. Louise Kennedy is an Irish author, and we follow Kushla, who is a school teacher, and it's about her relationship. She gets into a relationship with a married man called Michael, and it's sort of all about that. But again, for me, this book, I just loved it so much. I loved the characters in it, and yeah, I love Louise Kennedy's writing. I just think she did the whole book really beautifully. It is quite a slow-paced book, especially at the beginning, like the first 3/4, I would say. So if you want a fast-paced book, even if you want a medium-paced book, this book is not that. But yeah, it was the quiet sort of things done really well. That's what I feel like this book did. Yeah, and the way she sort of held the tension throughout the book, and then yeah, it was just, yeah. I can't talk much more about this book. I just loved it, as I do all of these. The third book on my list, I forgot to say, this is basically going to be me hugging all the books, as you're going to sit like, obviously. And this is one I recently got the physical copy of, which is Cat Lady by Dawn Porter. I love this book so much, and it really surprised me, as did Trespasses, because Charlie recommended this to me. He was like, Charlie, you need to read this book. So I did, and in this book we follow Mia, and she is, at the start of the book, she's going a pet grief support group, and yeah, so she goes there because she's got a cat called Pigeon, and she's scared of Pigeon dying, even though Pigeon is actually alive, and so it's very very funny, and I just loved Mia so much. Mia is like a hyperbolic kind of character. She's sort of, I feel like she's sort of written to the extremes, and I don't think you can't take anything in this book, I don't think you should really take too seriously. But obviously at the heart of this book, Mia has actually got some issues going on, and that's obviously the reason she's going to this support group. So yeah, I just love Mia. I just thought it was really funny. It has the funniest sex scene I've ever read in a book. It just made me laugh so much. And also with this book, I can't not show you this book and not show you this. Look, I mean, isn't that so much fun? So if a book can't get any better, it's got gorgeous naked hardcover as well. Yeah, I don't think that this would be for everybody, but it was just such a fun book, and so it really surprised me. Yeah, I loved it. If you want to laugh, if you want to cry, read this book. Right, the next book I'm going to talk to you about, again, another one. Well, none of these the last two books I don't think will be a surprise to anyone that's watched my videos regularly. It's Small Worlds by Caleb Azumah Nelson. I got this book out of the library and I loved it so much I had to track down my own physical copy. So, and this book again is signed by the author. And we suppose it is. And this in this book we follow Stephen, and this is set, I think it's like the early 2000s, and we follow Stephen over 3 summers, and it's this book sort of, it is a lot to do with Stephen and his Nigerian family. That is the main core of this book, I would say, but there are other things going on, and I just loved Caleb Azumah Nelson's writing so much. It's very poetic, it's got such a beautiful rhythm to it, and yeah, so I feel like this is like the perfect summer read. So if you're looking for like quite a short book that sort of to give you like really good feelings, but also there is some heavy things in here, yeah, check out this gorgeous book. Yeah, I loved it. I've got his other book, his debut book, on my shelves to read, so I can't wait to get to it. Small world. Loved it. Now the last book I'm going to talk to you about is Someday Maybe by Onyi Nwabineli, and this book it just really affected me. It really, again, it's another one that surprised me. And in this book we follow Eve, and at the beginning of the book she has discovered her husband sort of death by suicide. So obviously this book comes with a lot of trigger content warnings. If you're sensitive to this, basically this book is, in this book we sort of, the main thing of this book is Eve in her grief, and Eve is in her grief the entire length of the book. So for some people that might be a lot. There is no quick solution to Eve's grief, and I love the brutal honesty of how it talks about grief. I've never read a book that talks about grief so honestly, and I just loved Eve's family in this. Eve is struggling, obviously, like I said, and they are just a constant source of love and kind, and they also bring this lightness, a slight lightness to the book. It isn't a light read, don't get me wrong, but it's sort of how she interacts with her family and the gorgeousness of that. Her family are Nigerian family, and yeah, they're just such a supportive thing, and also the friendships in this book. Eve has got some really strong friendships, which I loved so much. Yeah, it's not a lot of plot, so this is a slow paced book, not a lot of plot, but gorgeous characters. So this was like my #1 book of the year so far. I can't see anything topping it. I could be wrong. We've got the book coming up, we've got other books I want to read, I don't know, but I just love this book so much, and it really, I cried so much in this book, and I just loved it. I feel like it's just so gorgeous, and so yeah, I loved it. So that was my #1 read. Have you guys read any of these books? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what your favourite book of the year is so far, or any books that have surprised you. Let me know that. I want to know that. Take care, and sending you guys lots of love. Thank you. Bye bye.
coffee and you.